There are few games that understand silence the way Dead Space really does. It's not the peaceful kind, of course, this is a horror game, but the kind that sits on your shoulder and just waits. The kind that makes every sound feel wrong, every shadow feel alive, every step feeling like a mistake. It's a series that built its reputation not just on horror, but on pressure. Constant, suffocating pressure, and now with Dead Space 4, in fact reportedly entering early development, conversations again following the success of the remake, that pressure is starting to build all over again. In fact, this isn't just about bringing Isaac back, it's about finishing something that never really got the ending it deserved. Let's be honest, Dead Space 3 left the series in a pretty strange place. It expanded the scale, leaned more into action, pushed the story towards something bigger, almost apocalyptic, but in doing that, it lost some of the isolation that made the original game so effective. The horror wasn't gone, but it was diluted, and then the series went quiet, completely quiet, for years. Until the remake happened, and that remake didn't just refresh the original, it reminded people why Dead Space mattered in the first place. The tight corridors, the strategic dismemberment, the heavy industrial atmosphere where every system felt grounded and believable. It didn't feel like a relic, it felt current, dangerous, relevant again. That's what changed the conversation. Because suddenly Dead Space 4 didn't feel like a risky revival, it felt like the next logical step. Now, nothing has been officially confirmed in a full revealed sense, but reports, developer comments, and industry movements suggest that the idea of continuing the series is very much alive internally. And more importantly, the tone of those discussions feel different this time. More careful, more aware of what worked and what didn't. And we think that's exactly what this sequel needs, because if Dead Space 4 is going to exist, it can't just follow where Dead Space 3 left off, it has to correct course. Which means bringing the focus back to horror, back to isolation, back to feeling that you are not equipped for what's coming next. And the easiest way to do that is to scale things down, at least in the way the game presents itself. Not necessarily a smaller story, but a more intimate one. Instead of galaxy-spanning stakes right from the start, the game could return to a single location or a tightly connected set of environments where every area feels deliberate. Maybe a ship, a station, a colony that's gone wrong. Something contains, because containment is where Dead Space thrived. Now imagine that kind of environment built with modern hardware. No loading screens, obvious transitions. It's just one continuous space that feels alive, or maybe more accurately, feels like it used to be alive. Systems still running, lights flickering, doors malfunctioning, the kind of environmental storytelling that makes you piece together what happened without the game needing to explain everything directly. That's the kind of immersion the series has always hinted at. Now, it finally has the tools to fully really deliver that. Then there's also Isaac. If he returns, and all signs actually point to that being the case, he won't be the same character we left behind. He can't be. He's been through too much. The marker, the hallucinations, the loss, all of it is shaped to someone who exists in a constant state of tension between reality and something else. A sequel has the opportunity to explore that more deeply, not just as a background story, but as gameplay. Imagine a system where Isaac's perception isn't always reliable, where the environment suddenly shifts, like Silent Hill, where enemies aren't always what they seem, where the line between hallucination and threat becomes blurred in a way that forces players to question their decisions. Because that's what psychological horror does the best. It doesn't just scare you, it destabilizes you. And Dead Space has always had that potential, even if it hasn't fully leaned into it before. Of course, none of this works without the core gameplay staying intact. Dismemberment isn't just a mechanic in Dead Space, it's the identity of the combat. You don't shoot enemies to kill them, you take them apart. It's precise, it's strategic, and it forces players to stay focused in a way that most shooters don't. The sequel would almost certainly expand on that, more enemy variety, more adaptive behavior, creatures that respond differently depending on how you attack them, and maybe even environments that play into combat more directly, giving players new ways to survive without simply relying on firepower. Because survival in Dead Space has never been about the strength, it's about the control and about losing it. We're going to talk about the bigger picture, of course. There's been growing discussions around the original creator of Dead Space, Glenn Schofield, having ideas for a darker continuation that never really fully materialized during, his time with the series. While his more recent project, the Callisto Protocol, explored similar territory, it didn't really quite capture the same balance that Dead Space had. But those ideas, that tone, that willingness to push horror into more uncomfortable spaces could still influence what comes next. Because if Dead Space 4 wants to stand out in today's horror landscape, it can't just be intense, it has to be disturbing. Not in a cheap shock value way, but in a way that stays with you, in a way that makes you think about what you just experienced long after you put the game down. That's what made the original games work. They didn't just show you horror, they made you sit with it. And then there's of course the question of scope again, because while scaling things down can help with the atmosphere, the story itself has room to expand. The Brethren moons, for example, introduced in Dead Space 3, are too significant to ignore. They represent something much larger than the events of a single ship or station. They turn the series from a localized horror story into something cosmic. The challenge is integrating that scale without losing its intimacy. Maybe the answer is perspective, we don't know. Instead of showing everything, the game lets you feel it, hints, signals, distant events that suggest something massive is happening beyond your immediate location. That way, the player still feels small, feels isolated, even if the stakes are enormous. That balance is difficult, but if done right, it could elevate the series beyond what's done before. Technically, the expectations are already set. The remake proved that Dead Space can look incredible with modern lighting and modern design and stuff. And most importantly, more tension, because at the end of the day, that's what the series is built on. Not jump scares, not action, but tension, the kind that builds slowly, the kind that never really fully releases. The kind that even makes the quiet moments feel dangerous. And if Dead Space 4 truly is happening, if all those discussions turn into something real, then this is its opportunity not to just continue a story, but to redefine what survival horror can feel like in a modern era. To take everything that worked before, strip away what didn't, and rebuild something that understands exactly why people were afraid to begin with. Because space is still dark, still silent and still waiting, and whatever is out there, it's definitely not done with us yet.